right, it's 9:30. Shall we kick this off?
Well,
I
yeah.
think we should. We've got
Why not?
a load of people online, so I think, yeah, this is perfect timing.
All right. Well, Aaron, great to see you, my friend.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
Uh, So, hi everybody. Welcome to our webinar where we're going to be talking about what happens after predictable revenue. I think many of you have come to see our well-known speaker today, Aaron Ross, who is the author of numerous books, Predictable Revenue, which is one of the Bibles of Silicon Valley sales books that almost all of us have read and put to work. Aaron is going to be our key speaker today, and I'm going to turn it over to him. So I'm Drew Sechrist. I'm CEO and co-founder of Connect the Dots, and Aaron and I used to work together many years ago back at Salesforce when he was actually developing the predictable revenue model. I was there at Salesforce with him. I was actually the beneficiary of this, so I was on the sales side that was closing the transactions that Aaron's team was teeing up for us. So
Yeah.
I was very early beneficiary and super grateful for everything that he and his team did. And together we grew the company from, well, I mean, I was there from pre-revenue at Salesforce to over $1 billion. And I think, Aaron, you were probably there, were you there a bit longer than I was? I can't remember when you left.
Oh, way short. I was only there from 2002 to 2006.
Oh, okay. So
Oh.
then you saw a very instrumental part where we became predictable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There, after there was big layoffs and other things around, 2000, 2001. I joined 2002 when they were starting to, rehire a few people. By the way, before we start, it's a private joke. I mean, if we went back and looked at the deals that the team sourced for you, Drew, it'd probably be funny. Go back and blast from the past, but
Do you have any of that data?
probably someplace
Yeah.
and some. So, probably some old sheets or emails or something back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's back when I was using Microsoft, Outlook. That was before I think Gmail.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like as you mentioned, predictable revenue in an unpredictable world, or what happens when predictable revenue is dead and it's not working. There's all kinds of, everyone's kind of wondering what's happening. This guy, right, CEO of Connect the Dots, there's me. If you haven't seen these books, so the ones on the left, they've been out for a while. There's a new one we're working on. I have a business partner in Brazil, and kind of a business in Brazil, and this is just an idea. It's in the early stages. We've got the book's not drafted, but we're talking to people. We kind of have our premises, and I'll share those with you today. Phantom Revenue. It's a working title, and again, just fun fact. We have 10 kids. And I think, my premise too is I've learned a lot from having so many kids of different ages, and I feel like there's more and more of an integration between, what's happening in the world and how to manage and lead, and whether it's like go to market and, kind of having a big family. So it's just interesting. I don't know if the next books will actually combine the two more, but I feel like a lot that I've learned in the people and the family side is translating to work more and more. But, I just have a few slides here to kind of set the stage. I think pretty commonly, like, in fact, I'm been helping a company for a while, and, on the surface, they got through COVID. They've been around 2.5, 3 million in revenue. LinkedIn looks fine. It's not one of these people who is constantly posting, I've implemented this N8N of agents and I'm now making $1 million a week. Right. But they're just like bread and butter business. However, behind the scenes, they've been plateaued for like 4 years at that level. And a lot of it's because the executives come in and go out, and they're just kind of like running in circles, and they don't really know what to do. But in a broader trend, there's just a general SaaS slowdown. And I think that's been mentioned in lots of different places online, but data, and this is from Clouded Judgment, kind of showing, the general industry in SaaS is slowing. I mean, there's that small slice of AI companies which are seeing a lot of growth. But I think, the point is that if you've had a company for a while, and a lot of the tactics that SaaS companies have used classically that have worked, a lot of it's kind of stopping it's not working as well. Right. And common executives have this feeling, and this is actually a quote from a VP of sales, that he's a little terrified at how fast things are changing. And I don't think that speed of change, the pace of change is going to slow down. It's probably only going to accelerate. And to counter a lot of like PE presentations, if you are at a company and you're trying to figure out either your growth is slowing or it's flat, or maybe just in your division or maybe your team, right? Because go-to-market execution is kind of like the top. I saw some stat that 63% of executives are, that's their top problem. In my mind, like AI is not going to save the day. We've seen this before. Drew and I are old enough where in the 2000s it was CRM that was going to like turn your sales team around, your go-to-market execution. Or then it was marketing automation. Now AI. Well, the thing is, AI obviously is great. I think people are starting to see it's a lot harder to use than people, it can be challenging to see results. And then even if you get results, it's challenging to maintain the agents or whatever your techniques are. There's no free lunch. So it comes back down to, if your business is well run, AI is more likely to help. If your business has issues, it's probably just going to speed up the issues. So you get more. In other words, if you're going in the right direction, it helps speed you up. If you're going in the wrong direction, it can also speed you up. And I think more fundamentally, in a world with AI, copycatting, whether it's marketing messages or products, or just like the level of noise is going to continue to grow. And so AI is going to create as many opportunities, but also as problems to be created. In other words, if everybody has a superpower, then nobody has a superpower, right? It's kind of like AI is just going to be embedded in everything like the internet or electricity. So it's kind of a lot of ways a distraction. And I think in an AI age where the noise will just keep growing, some of the ways you could stand out could be just constantly innovating. If you have unique assets, relationships are a great one. Or for a lot of people, it's like they're just going to work harder. And I think that's people's default, where if you're struggling with go-to-market with your executives or wherever you are, or in your family, humans' default is to go back and kind of do more what they're already doing. It's been back at Force. It was salespeople aren't getting enough meetings, so make more phone calls. Basically, your phone calls aren't working very well, so do more of them. And then it became the emails you're sending aren't getting enough meetings. It's a low response rate, so send more of them. And I think it's hard for most people or teams to step back and say, what we're doing isn't working. How can we take the time to kind of fix it and get in a new direction? And I think because when people are stressed, it's just really hard to slow down and fix that. And so you end up with a lot of people, again, whether it's the company level or the go-to-market level, that are constantly in motion, but you're not really getting anywhere. And I think getting to the premise of the new book, what we're looking at is identifying these kind of this iceberg, right? So at the top, everyone obsesses over execution. Like, what do I do? What's the framework? What's the agent? What's it used to be the email template, whatever. Like, just tell me what to do. What's the metric? And I think there's very little attention. And there's some team friction, which is what I've noticed compared to the Salesforce days and before that.
Is that Aaron or me?
That is
Me?
Aaron.
Ah, okay.
Yep, strange. Not had this issue before.
Well, Aaron's in the UK today. Maybe they're having an internet issue.
I
Hey,
think
Aaron.
he's back.
I think
Aaron,
that was
you're back.
my internet popped out for a second. Am I back? All right, I'm back.
You're back. You're back.
So we're looking at.
But your slides are not back, I think.
I might need to reshare.
Yeah.
So the point is that if you're trying to fix, let's say, go-to-market, because pretty much everyone struggles with go-to-market. Oops. All right, you're like, okay, what's the system? What's the agent? What's this? Okay, it's kind of like you might get, even if you got a good answer, which often you don't, it might fix it for today, but then everything's changing. So when it's broken in a month or 2 months, then what do you do? And I think it's very hard to kind of say, look, we've got these issues around team and execution and locking people's talents and ideas and just trying to keep in sync. And even more fundamentally, the mental noise, which pretty much is, for the most part, ignored in corporate culture, is at the root of a lot of the problems. And that is can show up as like compare and despair, shiny object syndrome, just call it kind of like ADHD type behavior, high anxiety. So, investors anxious about, and I've seen this on boards, right? And investors really anxious about the numbers. And so they like press the CEO. And so the CEO is like, and then the CEO presses the VP of sales. Who presses the salesperson, who presses the customer, who then customer gets upset, it doesn't go well. Emotions are infectious. So, ultimately, I think because of AI, just the way the world is going, all right, and this is kind of the basis of the book, the mental noise is kind of at the root of many challenges. And so it's not getting dealt with. And that spreads up to team friction, and that creates execution gaps. Okay, so if I kind of step back for a second, big picture, I don't know what's going to happen with tech. With AI, no one really does, except it's going to create more noise, more opportunities, but more distraction. But no matter what happens, like the thing that no matter what you do, if you invest in relationships, that will always cut through the noise. Right. So this is a safe bet, no matter what you are doing or think you're going to do or the competition. And to me, relationships, for most people, I think have a negative connotation, unfortunately. Because there's so many people who associate them with it's not scalable, and plus now with younger generations, I don't want to talk to people. Like there's just a lot of relationship resistance. So in my mind, if we can combine relationships with systems, like these are areas that will create durable growth in the future, no matter what happens. And for the last bit here, there's a lot of ways you can implement relationships in a business. Relationships can be done one-to-one, right? If you're doing phone calls with your customers, they can be done at scale, like I've done with books, speaking, content. So the way that you might implement them could look like investing in better relationship with your team, so your team executes better. It could be in how your salespeople interact with customers. It could be having more events, which is very popular in person. It could be building communities. A lot of people are going towards partner programs and ecosystems and communities. So there's a lot of ways to implement them. But this is also where I've been talking to Drew for quite a while, and because I really believe in what they're doing. And in fact, at that point, Drew, how about you want to take over, or I can just hit a button a couple times?
Hit the button once, and I think yeah,
All right.
I'll say next slide a couple of times. It's going to be
All right.
awkward, but we'll get through.
I'm on the power of your
Yeah.
network.
Yeah. So thanks, Aaron. That's a great segue into what we do at Connect the Dots, and I'll keep this relatively short because I think we want to get back to hearing what Aaron thinks about the world and where we're going. But the power of relationships is really what Connect the Dots is based on. And when Aaron and I were at Salesforce in the early days, one of the things that we did even then, even as Aaron was developing this predictable revenue motion, and we were benefiting from it, we were also on the enterprise side of the sales organization, we were leveraging our network inside of Salesforce. So because, and this is one thing I want to come back to, Aaron, because we were all essentially in one room. Now the rooms got bigger, and we actually had multiple rooms in our offices, but we all knew each other pretty well at Salesforce in those early days because it was a pretty small company. And we got comfortable talking to each other and asking each other for help with relationships when we needed them. So it was easy for any of us to go over to Mark Benioff and say, Mark, we're trying to sell into this account. How can we break in? Do you know somebody over there? And Mark would invariably, if it was in Silicon Valley, Mark knew somebody, so he would say, I know so and so, from such and such, and I can send them an email, and then we would leverage that relationship. We'd draft a little email for Mark to send to the person they knew. That person would receive an email from Mark. They knew who Mark Benioff was, our CEO. They'd reply to Mark, and we'd get a meeting. And that was a great additional part of our sales motion. So we knew way back in the early 2000s that this was an amazing sales motion. But I think the one thing that Aaron really nailed earlier on is it didn't really scale that well. You would find these relationships kind of randomly, and sometimes it would work and sometimes it wouldn't work. We couldn't figure out how to scale them.
And it was pre-LinkedIn, right?
It's pre-LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn probably came around 2003, 2004, something like that. So even before that, we were leveraging our relationships. When LinkedIn came along, LinkedIn made it easier. And in fact, in some ways, LinkedIn back then made it easier than today because the network was smaller, but it was clean. If you were connected to somebody on LinkedIn, it meant there's a high probability you actually really knew that person. Fast forward to 2025, and that's really not the case. So I'd be curious that we should maybe do a poll. And Ian, I don't know if you can do a poll in the background. I'd be curious to hear what people think. Like, what percentage of your LinkedIn contacts do you actually know, or know well enough that you could reach out to them? So this was the power of the network. We knew there was a power of the network that was there, but it wasn't visible to us. And so we would kind of have to grope around in the dark and stumble into it. And I guess, Aaron, you're now not sharing, so I can probably.
I want to put your,
Yeah.
beautiful face up there on the screen for a bit.
Yeah. Well, I was actually, I could actually take over, so I don't have to say next slide if you want me to. Oh, but you're there.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So, so what Connected Odds does, just in a nutshell, so you're aware, is we allow companies to aggregate their collective networks to see who knows who and how well. And we do this in a pretty interesting way. We analyze the email metadata of all your communications between people, and you can set this up as an individual. You'll see later in today's presentation a way for you to do that. You can also set it up as a company, so you collectively are seeing all of the relationships that you have at your collective disposal, with this really core element that's missing from other ways that you could do this, which is the relationship score. How well do any two people know each other? So you can see that, one of your colleagues, your CEO or your CFO, or just the person who sits next to you, or your board member, or your customers, you can see if they have a strong relationship with the CEO at the company that you want to get to. And then we make it really easy to do the thing that we would do with Mark Benioff and our other executives 20-something years ago, which is you can draft a little ghost email for that appropriate person to send on your behalf to enable the introduction. And if that person receives it from the person that they know in your network, the probability that they're going to reply is extremely high. So by taking this approach, you can do this at scale like never before. And you're basically shooting bullseyes every time. You're not wasting your relationship capital trying to figure out people who might know each other on LinkedIn, but really don't. And then you're burning out the people that could make those introductions. And it's fatiguing for you trying to make those requests.
Yep, 100%. By the way, I will point out in here, here, okay. I had this point, systematic customer referrals. And I keep telling companies, even when I'm helping, like, I understand in SaaS, especially why there's not like a systematic way for salespeople to ask for referrals or customer success people to ask for referrals from customers. You've kind of got the people taking care of customers with certain metrics who have the customer relationship over here and the people who are trying to get new business over here. And it's just hard to coordinate, but that's the shortest path towards a go-to-market motion that, has a system and leverage the relationships and will get something going. So, but I know it's not as sexy as like outbound, inbound agents and this other stuff. So do you want
The
to?
thing yeah. So let's dwell on that topic for just a second, because I think you are onto something. So the one of the things that we did early at Salesforce, and I've seen lots of other companies do very effectively, is ask for referrals from their customers. Now, again, early on at Salesforce, it would basically be the account executive when they would close a transaction. Before they would close a transaction, if they had been dealing with a VP of sales, they might say, "Hey, VP of sales, we know we're going to make you successful. You're going to love our product, Salesforce.com. So knowing that we're going to make you successful, when you're successful, would you make an introduction for me, to 3 other VPs of sales that you think would benefit from Salesforce.com?" We would ask that, and we'd get it. They were excited about it, and we delivered. We made them successful, and they would introduce us and happily introduce us. And that was part of our early growth strategy. Now, you're relying on that person to kind of just come up with the 3 people off the top of their heads that they could make an introduction for you. And the other thing that's a challenge with this is those introductions might not fall into your territory, depending on how companies are structured.
Yeah.
So let's say I was the account executive, I would get 3 back, and that's awesome, but none of them are mine. So I would pass them to my colleagues, and I did. And part of the reason I passed them to my colleagues was we were good friends. All of us were good friends. 2, we all had equity in the company in Salesforce. So even if that wasn't a deal for me to pursue, if I could pass that to one of our other colleagues and they close that transaction, then that was going to make the company better. And it was just the right karmic thing to do. I'm kind of curious to hear how you think that could scale up today, Aaron. You've thought about this. Like, how do you, in today's environment, things are different. A lot of companies are remote. They don't have quite the same dynamics working together with their colleagues. Some companies don't have the same type of equity distribution. They should. They should certainly do that. That's a core one. How do you think about activating customer referrals at scale?
Yeah. Well, I don't think it'd be that hard. I haven't done it with a company, but what you need to do, because most companies are set up where you've got salespeople who kind of going for new business and customer success or account management on renewals and maybe upsells. And there's gonna be exceptions, but that's most how most B2B companies are. And honestly, that's partly because of the predictable revenue model, specialization. And so you do need to have a bit of a teamwork system and some sort of new metrics. It could be on numbers of referrals, and there's like direct referrals where you actually ask for someone and you get it. There's indirect referrals where people kind of come back and give them to you. But ultimately, you're trying to set up a system where you're kind of measuring referrals or business from it, and you're encouraging or creating some structures for the salespeople to partner up or work with the account managers to have a system to ask for referrals. Now, I think again, it's just a little bit of friction, which is why people don't do it, because one step is what I believe is the account owner, let's call it at this point the customer success person. The best thing is for them to actually on a live phone call, or if they know the person really well, but ask, hey, would you be up for referring us? Right. I'm not a big believer in a lot of these mass, there's tools out there to automate, like, hey, we'll email all your customers to ask for referrals. And I think those get old, right? Then once you have that permission for someone who's willing to refer you, separately, you can go, it makes it easier if you can find 2 or 3 people who are the right type of customer who connected to them. Ideally, maybe even in your own territory or the relevant territory, which today is, it's more possible because of LinkedIn and tools to do this. So again, I don't think it's just a little bit different motion, but it's different enough that people just aren't putting the legwork to do it. I'm sure someone's doing it. I just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. Aaron, one way I kind of think about, your career thinking and kind of your position in the industry now is you're a little bit like Jerry Maguire.
Okay.
Has anybody ever said that?
I don't think so.
Really? I mean, it's like, fewer customers, more attention, more focus, more personalized, relationship. It feels like that's kind of like you are the guy who invented predictable revenue, which is basically it's all about scale, right? It's about coming up with a manufacturing line.
Manufacturing. It's like the Toyota, one of the books that inspired me was the Toyota Way.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Interesting.
Now, I would say yes. However, just to remind people, like relationships can be created at scale, right? Founder-led marketing, events. Most people who do newsletters don't do them very well. They're kind of generic. So it's more about when you're creating relationships, it's not just the one-by-one, which are incredibly important too, right? So it's not about only doing scalable things, which honestly a lot of times doesn't work. It's not about only doing it manual. It's kind of being smart about your customers and your strengths and how can you leverage and invest in relationships in a way that makes sense for your market and your business and what your strengths are.
Okay. So yes or no, you're Jerry Maguire.
Yes. I'll just take the yes.
And maybe could you we kind of jumped in with an assumption that everybody knows what predictable revenue is, but just for a baseline, how would you describe what the predictable revenue motion was for anyone who on the call may have not heard of it before?
Well, I think most people associate it with doing outbound prospecting to go get meetings and appointments through cold email, even or cold calling or LinkedIn, but basically systematized outbound prospecting. However, that is where the main association. It was also really about even more fundamentally specializing salespeople. There's people in the sales teams. So there's kind of more jobs so people can do fewer things better, right? Prospectors who prospect, inbound lead response, closers, account managers. And then, there's the third component I think too is that called seeds, nets, and spears, which is a lead is not a lead is not a lead. Like marketing leads have their own kind of characteristics and funnel and metrics and lead speeds, and those funnels and the metrics are different than outbound generated leads, which tend to be slower and bigger. And that's all different than word of mouth, which is what we're trying to focus on here, which has, word of mouth is great, right? When you can get it, faster sales cycles, higher
Yep.
rates, but it's harder to replicate or scale or grow in a predictable way.
Yeah.
So those kind of the basis. A lot of companies have, defined their business models off of predictable revenue.
What do you think, which components of that model still work today in 2025?
Well, they all work. I think the thing that didn't work in the original book is there's some examples of tactics like, there's this thing called like referral emails, and I had funnels that had specific examples of if you do, 1,000 emails, you send 800 emails and you get X responses, like a 9%, 7 to 9% response rate. And all those metrics aren't relevant today. And the tactics have changed, but the principles still work. So outbound prospecting still works. I mean, it wasn't even about outbound. I just happened to build the outbound team at Salesforce. It was about if you have predictable lead generation, then you can create predictable revenue. And that can come from product-led growth or outbound prospecting or, whatever the lead's coming from. So outbound still works, inbound still works, word of mouth still works. It's like the more things change, the more they stay the same. And there's new tech and there's more noise. It just means you have to be better. Like blogs, there's content marketing. Basically, the way the world is going, it's kind of like in the past, I think you could take any practice, content marketing or outbound prospecting, and you could kind of like copy paste what people are doing. You didn't have to be really great at it to get it to work. And now with the busy world, you kind of have to be better to make something work, whether it's product, go to market. You have to really know who your customer is. What do they want? Can you speak their language? Do you have the empathy to know them? Do they prefer, is it video, audio, what channels and what mediums and what message? And you just really have to be sharper to get it to work. Copy paste is dying in a way. So those work. You still need to specialize your jobs, whether they're humans or agents. It may not be the the certain roles, but just people don't do lots of things well. So the more you can kind of do fewer things better. So the principles are all still alive and well. And I think one of the areas of the book that wasn't really, it wasn't as sexy was, treating, kind of having a collaborative management system, treating people with respect, involving your team, salespeople or otherwise, and kind of, managing the team and, improving things for them and not being a complete, what do you say? When the classic was when sales executives would just define the comp plan without talking to salespeople and just tell them this is what it is, versus I think at Salesforce we did this. I think you were on the comp committee, right, Drew? And in my team, we involved salespeople with should we change things? Getting their feedback, not letting them decide, but getting their feedback, getting their ideas. And then also when there's a new plan, they weren't surprised. So just an example of involving people in the team with their own destiny. So they're more bought in to, the team, company, direction.
Do you think that should be applied to, whatever it does get automated with AI? Do you think that that's the right way to do it as well? Involve the team in figuring out which parts of their job should be cast off?
Yeah, I mean, AI is freaking cool, right? However, people, I have a friend, he told me, when they unearthed some old Roman army management scrolls from 2000, 1500, whatever, a long time ago, all the same people problems were the same as today. So AI, in a lot of ways, will change things, but also they won't change things. Like people are going to be people. We're going to get overwhelmed by trying to do too many things. We're going to be caught up with shiny object syndrome. So it's one of these things, I would, before the internet, there's a lot of stuff that's basically the same. But now we've got AI. Now there are some new things that, completely change. Like for me, being able to create mock-ups and visuals and speed up, I can work on like 5 books now that I really want to do and have visuals. And there's a lot of stuff I can do now I couldn't do before because it's kind of like a business partner. I think a lot of the day-to-day of having you have a team and B2B, it's not going to necessarily change that much. I mean, did outreach and sales loft, there's all these automation tools that help automate outbound or, things that automated content marketing. Did it really change things that much?
I would argue in some ways, yes, because that job description became the SDRs or BDRs of that era became kind of like I don't know how you'd say it, but they were like pilots of this machine. They'd just turn this machine on, they would be fed some input, like these are your target accounts. They would put those target accounts into the machine, they would operate the machine and kind of paint by numbers. And it was more efficient for sure. But I wonder if they maybe didn't develop. I wonder if they didn't develop skills to become the next phase of like in their sales career, if they were going to become an account executive or they were going to move into marketing or something else. Maybe they didn't develop their next set of skills as rapidly because they were focused on just feeding this machine to run.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I
I
mean,
don't.
again, there's lots of stuff. The tech changes. I don't think the work changes that much, honestly. Like one more like soapbox thing. There's some of these the tech leaders, AI leaders, like, oh, we're gonna have to, have 3.5 day work weeks because there's not gonna be enough work to do and have a universal income. I'm like, you fucking smoking crack. Like, is there any technology? Every big technology, everyone's like, oh, we're gonna have all this leisure time. No one really understands that there's just new work and new busy work and new like annoying work, new great work and new annoying work. People are going to be as busy as they ever have been. All the technology we have, people work more and they're more
Mhm.
stressed. So I don't see AI changing that. I think it's just going to amplify it. So
Yeah. So, Aaron, I think that you rightfully have identified there's a bunch of angst out there about what's going to happen with AI and how it's there are dangers to us and dangers to our happiness. Is there anything
oh,
in
and
particular that you're?
opportunities. Yeah.
I was going to ask that. So, like, what is the thing that you're most excited about with AI?
Well, I mean, look, societally, I don't really know because there's so many easy things to see. It's easy to see, especially as a parent, all the potential risks and problems. And that's also what we're wired as humans. We tend to see, it's like the fear of loss. And there's amazing things, you see it, whether it's like robots and medical. I think personally, what I'm most excited about, because it's the things I'm using AI for, right? And I'm having fun. Honestly, the first time I've actually had fun, like actual fun with work. So to me, I think it's
That's cool.
unlocking incredible like creativity with, now there's projects I couldn't have done without it. So, let's say book ideas or, designing like coffee brands, or I'm doing these like funny like business cards as executive gifts, or it's just like all kinds of projects I can do now and that I couldn't do because I can take an idea and I can take it so much farther on my own with kind of like an AI chat before I have to get another human involved, which I still do. It's like these brands in coffee, coffee brands, or with these cards as like physical products. I think honestly they're just gonna be really cool to do. Still need a human designer at some point. So, and with my kids, with my daughter who's 11, she's thinking about like a skincare brand. And it's more for fun, right? She wants to do it someday. And it's not like, oh, we're going to start a business. Because again, I don't think I think it became in the States really common that, oh, kids should be taught to be entrepreneurs. Like, just let's let them be, let them figure out their own way. But like, now you can come up with ideas and see them. Again, the flip side is going to be when everybody's flooding everything with, it's kind of like Amazon. If you notice over the last like 5 years since COVID, China has just copycatted everything.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I'm going to bring it back to relationships, which is when there's infinite copycatting, you have infinite ideas, you can create infinite stuff, basically. You could either be really, really good at execution or have unique moats or work really hard, or for me, can you kind of rely or invest in the power of your relationships? So I'm more like the relationship person, and now I'm adding in creativity and things. It doesn't mean like your strength might be just like we're grinding, like you got to stick to your strength. But I think the power of relationships, again, no matter what happens and with AI or the world or the next pandemic, because there'll be more, stuff that rocks the world, like that is for sure a really important, not even a safe bet, a smart bet.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, actually,
It,
guys, let me jump in for a second. I got a couple data points. One, well, we have a bunch of questions. We get three. But one data point is we get 79% respondents from the participants, and we got 12 said 25% or less in other LinkedIn contacts are actually known personally. We had 9 say 26 to 50%, and then we had 2 say over 76%. So corroborated that,
Yep.
that LinkedIn is very, very low as far as like actual relationships. And then questions wise, can you guys actually see the questions?
Yeah, we can. I was going to suggest and I think some great questions in here.
Yeah.
So Aaron, do you think technology provides a trend to go full cycle versus specialization?
Ah, this question, should reps be full cycle versus specialized? It's like, well, should you be vegetarian or carnivore?
Mm-hmm.
It depends on your market. Like if you're all pure super enterprise, then full cycle makes a lot of sense. As soon as you start to, go from super enterprise to mid-market enterprise, you got to think, what does our system of work look like? How are we generating opportunities and leads? What are the jobs to be done? All right. And then you have to decide, does it make more sense for all or some? Because you can have blended models of our reps to be full cycle, which I generally think don't work very well. Because sometimes with some people it can, but not overall the whole team, unless you have amazing training and recruiting and systems. So which segments should be full cycle and which should be specialized. So, again, it's on LinkedIn, it's much more effective to have marketing say that, oh, something is dead, predictable revenue is dead, or specialization is dead, or SDRs are dead. Like that's just better marketing. It's, the life is a lot more nuanced. So, and go to market.
One additional thought that was brought up here in the questions was, I'll just say it, siloed processes of predictable revenue could be an issue with not having the smart people at the tip of the spear. And
Oh, yeah.
um, that's interesting because we talked to some companies where the getting the foot in the door requires a lot of domain expertise. Very complex systems or products, and you can't just have kind of somebody very early in their career trained up start those conversations. So I've seen in one situation where companies are really just leaning on very senior AEs to do their own prospecting and giving them the tools so that they can do it themselves because they've got the ability to have those conversations. I've also seen some like super BDR teams where they're very senior people and they're very well compensated, kind of more than you would expect on that side of the, like typically you think of the SDR BDR team as the early in your career, stop, and then you will either
Usually.
become a manager of that team, and then a manager of those managers, or you'll become an account executive, or maybe move into marketing or some other function. But have you seen that? Have you seen where some outbound is now, pure outbound person who's not responsible for closing, but they're very senior people and highly
Uh,
compensated?
I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it. So I'm sure, makes sense for some people, based on deal size and, the
Mhm.
funnel and, so it's, yeah, I use eating systems as a lot of parallels because it doesn't matter what your favorite influencer does. Just because you copy their eating system doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Everyone's got their different schedules and bodies, and same thing with
Mhm.
business. It's like we want going back to the iceberg. We want the answers, right? Just tell me the answer. Like we all want
Yep.
that, and it's not just business, right? Yeah, but sometimes you get some useful answers. A lot of times, usually like your breakout successes, and whether it's in life, kids, money, don't come from getting. Usually, it's not other people's answers. It's like kind of figuring your own version out and struggling along the way. Not always.
Yep.
There's lots of people who said, read the book, did it, doubled the business. Okay, that works too sometimes. But most people, it's a lot more tricky, and I think that's just gonna again be more of a trend in the AI age when you can kind of do anything. It's like it's hard if you're coming out of college and you can do anything or be anything. Like, what do you do? It's a
Mhm.
paradox of choice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real problem. I mean, it is a very high class problem that we have, but it's a real problem. One question that I see here is coming back to relationships. How can a distributed sales team build and scale them effectively in 2025? Well, I think, Aaron and I have a lot of thoughts on this, and one point of view, we have a point of view at Connect the Dots, of course. If you'd like to see a demo of Connect the Dots, then you can check it out here. You can book a personalized demo with somebody on our team. Take a shot of that QR code, and you can book right away. If you want to connect with Aaron or with me, you can see us both there on our QR codes. Aaron, what's your latest project? I think you're working on a new book that you would.
So
Is this the one?
like I said, I'm working on a bunch of books and some other stuff, but really books are kind of the core of what I do. And these are all at different stages. So I would like to finish 3 of these by next year. So income operating system's almost done. It's like an individual, how to make more money. Eat Shit and Grow is more like crazy family stories from having a family 10. And The Grind Must Die is a mid-career reinvention of what do you do and how do you figure out what you love to do and make money from it. So those are pretty far along. Phantom Revenue is early stages. And last one, The Impossible Puzzle, is just kind of an idea. And life is so, you can't solve life, right? No matter how far you get, it's just confusing, it's uncertain. It doesn't matter how much money you make or, it's just, that's the nature of life. So I'm not sure how I'll do it, but, maybe it's a book of paradoxes. So if any of these things are interesting, I'm, again, always looking for beta readers. And, this is again with AI. I'm hoping and good partners and tools to get these out in the next. So income operating system, Eat Shit and Grow, and Grind Must Die. Hopefully over the next 12 months, all come out.
Aaron, if they want to be beta readers for you, are you looking for that? How can they do that?
Yeah, go to the prior slide.
Okay.
So there's my email or newsletter. Post stuff out. You just email me.
Great. Aaron, we've all really benefited over the years from your thoughts and analysis and synthesis about what's going on. I love having you just perceive the world and then distill it down into some clear thoughts. You've been fantastic at that, and you've really helped us as an industry and helped me individually. So thank you. Anything else that you'd like to share with the audience before we call it a wrap?
No, I mean, I think there's a lot that with Connect the Dots, why we're doing this webinar, that you're, on in an area where I think it's only going to be really helpful to companies. I think too, it's natural these days to feel like, whether you're watching LinkedIn and, you're not doing enough, the compare and despair, right? Someone else is, everyone's crushing it and you're not. So just realize like everyone has their struggles. Right. Even the people posting it like they're amazing, revenue growth, everyone's got their struggles. You just need to stick to your business and don't get distracted by other people's shiny objects.
Awesome. Well, Aaron, thank you so much, and thanks everybody for showing up today and asking great questions. Thanks for the poll results. That was really interesting to see. Ian, any other last details before we call this a wrap?
No, just that, but stay tuned on LinkedIn for the Connect the Dots page. We'll continue to do more webinars. We're looking at adding more guests to the series. So just stay tuned.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys.
And thank you, Aaron. Bye-bye.